In a forgotten village nestled deep within the heart of a dark, ancient forest, there was a legend whispered among the locals. A story so chilling that no one dared speak of it after sunset. They said that once, every full moon, a shadowy figure would rise from the depths of the forest, searching for a beautiful woman to make his eternal bride. The villagers called him the Monkey Man, a ghostly creature who wandered the woods, his glowing red eyes watching from the shadows, waiting for his next bride. The tale told of how, long ago, a man had angered the gods. His cruelty toward women earned him a curse so vile, it turned him into a beast, part man, part monkey. His soul became bound to the forest, unable to leave, and to survive, he needed the souls of beautiful women to remain with him forever. His brides would vanish without a trace, their beauty preserved in death, their spirits trapped in his twisted grasp for eternity. The village elders always warned the young girls, stay away from the forest during the full moon. Do not wander near the trees or you will hear the Monkey Man's call, and once you do, he will never stop until you are his. Some said you could feel his presence before you saw him, an unnatural cold that made your breath hang in the air, even on the warmest night. Others claimed they had seen his shadow slinking between the trees, moving silently, as if the forest itself feared him. Few believed the stories anymore, dismissing them as old wives' tales meant to scare children. But those who remembered the missing girls, the ones who had walked into the woods and never returned, knew the truth. The Monkey Man was real, and when the full moon hung high in the sky, no one was safe. The veil between the living and the dead would thin, and the Monkey Man would come to claim what was his. Among the villagers was a young woman named Ayla. She was known for her beauty, her long dark hair flowing like silk, and her eyes gleaming with curiosity. But what set Ayla apart was not just her appearance, it was her spirit. Unlike the other girls, Ayla wasn't afraid of the legends that haunted the village. She had always been drawn to the unknown, fascinated by the stories that others feared. The tales of the Monkey Man? To her, they were just myths, ghost stories told by the elders to keep children from wandering too far. Ayla loved the forest. She often ventured there alone, basking in the peaceful silence, the soft rustle of the leaves and the sweet scent of the earth. The darkness didn't frighten her, nor did the warnings from her family and friends. To her, the forest was beautiful, not dangerous. She believed it held secrets, but none that would harm her. She had heard the stories all her life, yet never once had she encountered anything unusual. Her mother worried constantly. Ayla, you must not go to the forest during the full moon, she would say, her voice trembling with concern. The Monkey Man is just a story, Ayla would reply with a smile, brushing off the warnings like dust from her shoulders. She refused to let fear control her, and besides, she loved the freedom the forest gave her. It was a place where she could escape the confines of village life and breathe. But as the full moon approached once more, the villagers' unease grew. They urged Ayla to stay indoors, to heed the warnings of those who came before her. The forest was not to be trusted during the full moon, they said, especially not by someone as beautiful as Ayla. Yet, with each warning, her resolve only strengthened. She was determined to prove the old stories were nothing more than superstition, remnants of a past steeped in fear. So, on the night of the full moon, Ayla made her choice. Ignoring the chills that ran down her spine, she ventured deep into the forest, unaware that this time the legends would prove true. This time she would not return the same. As the moon climbed higher in the sky, casting an eerie silver glow through the dense canopy of trees, Ayla wandered deeper into the forest than she ever had before. The air felt heavy, each step she took muffled by the thick carpet of fallen leaves. The usual sounds of the forest, the chirping of crickets, the soft rustling of small animals, had faded into an unnatural silence. Yet Ayla pressed on, determined to prove that the legends were nothing but old folklore. The deeper she went, the more the forest seemed to change around her. The trees appeared older, their gnarled branches twisting overhead like skeletal arms. Shadows seemed to move of their own accord, slinking along the ground and darting behind the thick trunks. Ayla paused for a moment, suddenly feeling the weight of the silence pressing against her ears. The wind, which had been softly whispering through the trees, had stilled completely, and then she heard it, a faint rustling, followed by the low, distant sound of something heavy moving through the underbrush. Her heart skipped a beat, but she quickly brushed off the unease. It's just an animal, she told herself, though the sound felt far too deliberate, far too slow to belong to any creature she knew. Still, she moved forward, her steps cautious, her curiosity piqued. It wasn't long before she stumbled upon something she had never seen in all her explorations of the forest. Hidden beneath layers of moss and overgrown vines was an ancient temple, barely visible through the thicket. It looked as though it had been abandoned for centuries, its stone walls crumbling, overtaken by nature. The sight sent a shiver through her, though she couldn't say why. Something about the temple felt wrong, out of place, as though it didn't belong in this world. Against her better judgment, Ayla stepped closer, her breath catching as she felt a sudden chill in the air. As she neared the entrance, she saw it, a dark, decaying statue, standing at the heart of the temple. Its form was unmistakable, a grotesque figure that looked both human and animal, its features twisted into a snarling grin. It was the Monkey Man. At the base of the statue lay a delicate, old wedding veil, its once white fabric now yellowed and torn by time. Ayla's fingers hovered over it, her instincts telling her to turn and leave, but she couldn't resist. She reached down and touched the veil. The moment her fingers brushed the fabric, the forest around her seemed to come alive. A cold, unnatural breeze swept through the trees, and the sound of rustling leaves grew louder, more frantic. The shadows around her lengthened, crawling towards her like living things. Panic gripped her chest as the faint whisper of a voice, deep and guttural, seemed to echo from the statue, though no one was there. Ayla's breath quickened. She turned and ran, her footsteps frantic as she fled the temple, the chilling sensation of being watched following her every move. The wind howled behind her, as if something or someone was chasing after her. She didn't stop until she was well beyond the forest's edge, her heart pounding in her ears. But even as she reached the safety of her home, she couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't alone anymore. That night, she dreamt of the Monkey Man, his eyes glowing red as he whispered her name from the shadows. From that night forward, Ayla's life was no longer her own. The moment she touched the veil, something had shifted. A connection had been made, and the forest had let her go, but the Monkey Man had not. The first few days seemed ordinary enough, though Ayla couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that had settled in her chest. She told herself it was just the memory of the strange temple and the eerie statue. She convinced herself the whispers she'd heard were nothing but the wind playing tricks on her. But as the full moon began to fade, the haunting truly began. At night, as Ayla lay in her bed, the familiar comfort of her room felt different, warmer, almost suffocating. The air was thick, and shadows clung to the corners in ways they hadn't before. At first, it was small things, scratching sounds along her walls, faint rustling outside her window. But soon, it became much worse. One night, as she lay in bed trying to fall asleep, she heard a noise. It wasn't the usual soft breeze or the occasional creak of the house. It was breathing, low, labored, and coming from just outside her window. Her heart pounded as she sat up, straining to hear. There it was again, slow and steady, as though something or someone was watching her. She rushed to the window, pulling the curtains aside, but there was nothing there. The moonlight illuminated only the empty yard and the still trees, but the sound lingered, chilling her to the bone. The nights grew worse. Shadows began to shift and move along her walls. She would catch glimpses of dark, monkey-like shapes darting from corner to corner. They were always just out of sight, quick enough to make her doubt what she saw, but slow enough to let fear settle deep into her bones. The dreams became unbearable. Every night, Ayla was tormented by visions of the Monkey Man, his grotesque figure lurking just beyond her reach. His red eyes burned into her, and she could hear his raspy voice, whispering her name over and over again. Each time she tried to run, her legs refused to move, and the world around her seemed to collapse into darkness. She could feel his cold, bony fingers brushing against her skin in the dreams, and she would wake up in a cold sweat, her heart racing. One morning after a particularly terrifying night, Ayla noticed something that made her blood run cold. Scratched into the wood of her bedroom wall, right above her bed, were 3 deep claw marks, as if something had been inside her room while she slept. She tried to tell herself it was just a trick of the light, but no matter how much she tried to ignore it, she knew the truth. The Monkey Man was coming for her. As days passed, her friends and family grew worried. They saw the change in her. the dark circles under her eyes, her nervous glances toward the forest, the way she jumped at every small sound. Ayla tried to confide in her best friend, telling her about the strange noises and the visions. But her friend, much like Ayla had before, dismissed it as paranoia, the product of an overactive imagination. But then, her friend disappeared. It was after another full moon, a night Ayla had spent cowering in her room, trying to block out the sounds of footsteps circling her house. When she went to visit her friend the next day, she found her house eerily silent, the door ajar. Her friend was gone, vanished without a trace. The only thing left behind was a thin layer of dust on the floor and deep claw marks scratched into her walls, much like the ones in Ayla's room. That was when Ayla knew this was no longer just a legend. The monkey man was real, and she had been marked. He was coming for her, and soon, no matter where she hid, no matter how hard she tried to escape, she would become his eternal bride. Desperate for answers and terrified by the disappearance of her friend, Ayla felt trapped in a nightmare she couldn't wake up from. The visions, the sounds, the scratching, everything pointed to one conclusion. The legend of the monkey man was not just a story. It was real, and she was at the center of it. But what could she do? How could she stop something that no one truly believed existed? With nowhere else to turn, Ayla sought out the oldest woman in the village, the wise woman, who was known to have knowledge of things long forgotten. Her house stood on the outskirts of the village, surrounded by ancient trees that seemed to guard the place from outsiders. Ayla had heard stories about her, whispered in hushed voices, saying she knew things, dark things, about the forest and its secrets. The wise woman welcomed Ayla with a knowing look in her tired eyes, as if she had been expecting her. Her small house was filled with the scent of herbs and incense, the air heavy with mystery. Ayla, nervous and shaking, told her everything: the statue, the veil, the terrifying visions, and the disappearance of her friend. The old woman listened carefully, her face growing grave as Ayla recounted the events. When Ayla finished, the wise woman remained silent for a moment, then spoke in a voice that seemed to carry the weight of centuries. "You have touched what should have never been touched," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "The veil you found, it belongs to him." Ayla felt her heart sink. "To the monkey man?" she asked, her voice trembling. The old woman nodded slowly. She explained that the monkey man was not just a ghost or a creature from a fable. He had once been a man, long ago, in a time when cruelty went unchecked. He was wealthy, powerful, and vain, known for capturing beautiful women to be his wives, discarding them once he grew bored. His heart was filled with malice, and his actions eventually angered the gods. As punishment, they cursed him, stripping away his humanity and transforming him into a grotesque creature, half man, half monkey. But the curse didn't stop there. The god bound him to the forest, forcing him to wander it for all eternity, forever seeking to replace the love he could never feel. He was cursed to search for brides, beautiful women whom he could trap in his twisted world, their soul bound to him for eternity, with no hope of escape. Each bride he took made him stronger, his curse deepening with every soul he claimed. The old woman's voice grew even quieter. "The veil you touched, it is a symbol. Once a woman lays her hand upon it, she is marked as his next bride. He will come for you, and when he does, there is no escape." Ayla's blood ran cold as the weight of the words settled over her. "But there must be a way," she pleaded. "How do I stop him? How do I break the curse?" The wise woman shook her head sadly. "The monkey man is bound by ancient magic, a force beyond our control. But there may still be a way to free yourself. You must return to the temple, face him, and destroy the veil. But be warned, if you fail, you will be his forever. And even if you succeed, there are forces at play far darker than you can imagine." Terror filled Ayla's heart, but she knew she had no choice. The monkey man had already claimed her friend, and soon he would come for her. She would have to face the nightmare that had haunted her every waking moment and risk everything to end it. The wise woman gave Ayla a small vial of protective herbs, urging her to keep it with her for courage. "But remember," she said gravely, "once you enter the temple again, the true battle begins. The monkey man will not give up his bride easily." With fear gripping her soul, Ayla prepared for what would be her final confrontation. The full moon was approaching once more, and this time she would not run. As the night of the full moon arrived, the village was bathed in an eerie silver light. The once familiar surroundings now felt foreign and hostile to Ayla, as though the very air had thickened with the weight of what was to come. She clutched the vial of protective herbs tightly in her hand, the wise woman's words echoing in her mind. The true battle begins now. Fear gnawed at her, but she knew there was no turning back. This was the night she would confront the Monkey Man and either break the curse or be claimed by him forever. The path to the ancient temple felt longer this time, the shadows more menacing, as if the forest itself was warning her to stay away. The trees seemed to lean in closer, their branches twisting like skeletal fingers reaching out to grab her. The wind whispered dark secrets in her ear, and though she was alone, Ayla felt eyes on her, watching, waiting. When she reached the temple, its decaying structure loomed before her like a forgotten tomb. The moonlight illuminated its crumbling stone walls, casting long shadows that danced unnaturally across the ground. With trembling hands, Ayla stepped inside. The moment she crossed the threshold, the air grew colder, and a deep, guttural growl rumbled through the temple's hollow halls. It was as if the very walls were alive, pulsing with the presence of something ancient and evil. Ayla's heart raced as she walked deeper into the temple, her every step echoing like a countdown to her doom. And then she saw it, the veil. It lay at the base of the grotesque statue of the Monkey Man, just as she had left it, but now it seemed to pulse with dark energy, as though it were alive. The statue's twisted features leered down at her, its red eyes glowing in the dim light, watching her every move. Ayla's breath caught in her throat as a shadow moved behind the statue. Slowly, the figure stepped into the light, revealing the terrifying form of the Monkey Man. He was more monstrous than she had ever imagined, his body hunched and twisted, his long limbs ending in sharp clawed hands. His face was a grotesque mix of human and animal, his glowing red eyes piercing through the darkness, locking onto hers with a chilling intensity. "You are mine," he rasped, his voice a low, menacing growl that sent shivers down Ayla's spine. "You touched the veil. Now you will be my bride, forever." Ayla's legs threatened to give way beneath her as she stared at the creature. Fear flooded her, but she knew she couldn't turn back now. She had to destroy the veil, break the curse, and free herself, or be lost to him for all eternity. With a shaky breath, she stepped forward, reaching for the veil. But the moment her fingers touched the fabric, the air around her erupted into chaos. The ground beneath her feet began to tremble, and the walls of the temple seemed to close in around her. The Monkey Man let out a guttural roar, his clawed hands reaching for her. Desperately, Ayla fumbled for the vial of herbs, but the Monkey Man was too fast. His cold, bony fingers wrapped around her wrist, pulling her toward him. His breath was hot against her skin, his eyes burning with fury. "You cannot escape me," he hissed. But Ayla wasn't giving up. With all her strength, she broke free from his grasp and threw the vial of herbs at his feet. For a moment, the air filled with a sharp, burning scent, and the Monkey Man recoiled, letting out a deafening scream as the protective herbs weakened his hold. Taking her chance, Ayla grabbed the veil and held it high above her head. The fabric seemed to pulse in her hands, alive with dark magic. She knew what she had to do. With a cry, she threw the veil into the flames of a nearby brazier, watching as it caught fire. The Monkey Man howled in agony as the veil burned, his form twisting and contorting in the firelight. The temple began to collapse around them, stones falling from the ceiling, and the ground beneath her feet cracking open. The curse was breaking, but Ayla knew she had to escape before the temple fell apart completely. As the fire consumed the veil, the Monkey Man's screams grew louder, and Ayla turned to flee. But just as she reached the temple's entrance, she felt a cold hand grip her shoulder. She froze, her heart pounding in her chest. The Monkey Man's voice, low and guttural, whispered in her ear, "You cannot destroy what has already claimed you." His hand tightened on her shoulder, pulling her back into the darkness. Ayla's scream echoed through the forest as the temple collapsed behind her, the flames consuming everything in their path. But when the smoke cleared, there was no sign of her. Only the ruins of the ancient temple remained, silent and still under the light of the full moon. In the village, the legend of the Monkey Man would continue, and every full moon the villagers would whisper of a new bride, Ayla, trapped forever, her soul bound to the forest, just like the ones before her. And somewhere deep in the woods, On nights when the moon was full, the haunting whispers of the monkey man could still be heard, calling out for his next bride. As the echoes of Ayla's screams faded into the night, the forest returned to its eerie silence. The ruins of the temple stood as a grim monument to what had transpired, a place where hope was extinguished and darkness thrived. The villagers, unaware of the true horror that had unfolded, continued their lives, ever wary of the warnings passed down through generations. But the legend grew, whispered among the villagers with a sense of dread. On nights when the moon hung full and bright, they spoke of a haunting presence lurking in the shadows of the forest, the spirit of a beautiful woman forever seeking escape from the monkey man's grasp. Days turned into weeks, and Ayla's absence became a painful memory. Her friends mourned her, but life in the village went on. Yet every so often, someone would venture too close to the forest's edge, drawn by the chilling allure of the tales. Each time, they would hear the whispers, soft at first, then louder, growing in intensity until they could no longer resist. The calls of the monkey man beckoned them deeper into the woods, promising secrets and treasures. One fateful night, a curious girl named Lena, intrigued by the stories, decided to explore the forest under the full moon's glow. As she stepped into the thick darkness, she felt a strange pull, as if the forest itself was welcoming her. The air was thick with anticipation, and an otherworldly chill wrapped around her like a shroud. As she ventured further, she stumbled upon the ruins of the ancient temple, its stones still warm from the recent fire that had consumed the vale. But the air was different now, charged with a sense of something lurking just out of sight. The shadows danced along the walls, and Lena felt a sudden urge to turn back. But it was too late. A low growl rumbled from the depths of the forest, sending a wave of fear through her. The monkey man emerged from the shadows, his eyes glowing like embers in the night. Lena froze, paralyzed by the sight of the creature that had become the stuff of nightmares. "You seek the truth," he hissed, his voice dripping with malice. "You wish to know the fate of those who came before you." With every word, the shadows around him seemed to pulse and shift, revealing the ghostly figures of Ayla and the other brides, their faces twisted in anguish. They were bound to the forest, forever prisoners of the monkey man, their beauty a curse that sealed their fate. "You will join them," he said, extending a clawed hand toward Lena. "Embrace your destiny as my eternal bride." The forest seemed to close in around her, the air heavy with despair. Lena's heart raced as she realized the truth. The legends were not mere stories but warnings, and she was about to become another chapter in the horror. In that moment of terror, a flash of desperation surged within her. She turned to flee, but the monkey man was faster. His cold fingers grasped her arm, pulling her back into the darkness. As she screamed, the forest echoed with her cries, mingling with the whispers of the trapped souls. In an instant, the ground beneath her gave way, and she fell into the depths of despair. The last thing she heard was the haunting laughter of the monkey man as the shadows swallowed her whole. The villagers would speak of Lena's disappearance the next day, and the cycle would continue, for the monkey man would always seek out beauty, drawing the curious and the brave into his dark embrace. And as the full moon rose high in the sky, the whispers of Ayla and the other brides would join Lena's cries, forever trapped in a nightmare of their own making. Thus, the legend of the monkey man would endure, a chilling reminder of the price of curiosity, echoing through the forest for all eternity.